and welcome into Poke the Bear episode 81, the Phil Kessel episode, the Anton Bleed episode. Connor, before we started recording, there was another name you added to those two that I thought was great. I will let you say that person for number 81.
The Miroslav Shatan, the famous Selly, in his final year in the NHL, right?
He came out with a bang. That guy was awesome.
Yes.
He was so underrated
good pickup.
Great pickup. And I mean, obviously they didn't win a cup with him, but it was the year before, and he was instrumental. Miroslav Shatan was great. He was such a complimentary piece.
Very good player.
Six. Very good player. But I'm Evan Marinofski. That is Connor Ryan. Connor, how are you?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. We are both in around Boston at least. We are getting another is it a storm on Friday? People are listening to this on Friday.
It's definitely a storm. It's not the 2 feet of snow that we had last Saturday. My sister was getting married actually on last Saturday. Good. We did not lose power. Did not have any flooding. So it was on the not on the beach. That would be uncomfortable. But on the coastline of Gloucester. Went very well though. Storm. Everyone was there the night before, so we avoid all of it. Made for some great photos. It wasn't like one of those ones where you could do like the photos like actually outside. People do it like there's a little few flurries. Like it was legitimately like 60 mile per hour winds, but it went great. Everything went well, and no complaints there. So we avoided the worst of it. And thankfully, this storm here on Friday is not going to be that much snow. I think it's like sleet. I think it's like a crappy commute kind of storm, but unless you're up in I think the Green Mountains is getting like 2 feet of snow. So if you go skiing, which I know you are, a big fan, that'll work out well later on in the weekend. But as a whole, we should be fine here. This is the weather portion of the podcast.
Well, I'd rather get the big snow for skiing because the reason I messed up my face was because it was ice. If I get some real nice snow, now we're cooking. So, but it is happy to hear that the wedding went well and hopefully the weather holds off. Now, it will not stop anybody from going to Bruins games because there are no Bruins games coming up, and it's not due to COVID or anything like that. It is the All-Star break. So it's a nice little deep breath in, deep breath out kind of part of the season. It's funny, when I was younger, you would think for players, you'd obviously want to go to the All-Star game, right? You'd all, of course, want to make it. But then you see what the guys do who don't make it, and they go to, the Bahamas or, like these beautiful, warm places, and you think, if I was in the middle of an 82-game grind, I think I'd way rather go on like a nice, relaxing vacation than go do like all-star festivities. And this year it's cool; it's in Vegas. But when it's in like Columbus or Minnesota, it's like, well, do you really want to do that?
Yeah, not great. No, I would much rather, even if you get that 1-game suspension, I would much rather just, be on vacation. Not have to worry about hockey. Like it's one thing just to all right, it's the All-Star, it's like a 3-on-3 exhibition, what have you, make a few appearances, what have you, but. It's another thing to just chill on the beach and not have to think about hockey at all, which must be very, very nice, especially for these guys.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But it comes at a good time for the Bruins because the last week or so, they have not played as well as they were beforehand. You look at, you can point to the Arizona game, the Seattle game. Those are both wins, but games that you'd like a little bit better of an effort. You have the Colorado game. Wasn't so good. I'm forgetting a game in there.
The Dallas game.
The Dallas game. Sunday, that's why I'm forgetting it. But it's funny because the last time the Bruins were on a long break, they came out like gangbusters. So, is this with this coming at a good time? Can people expect a similar rebound after this one?
Well, it's tough to expect all of a sudden they're going to win, 7 of 8 or something out of the break. Especially, I think they open up with, Pittsburgh and Carolina, which is a tough draw to open it with. So, might not want to, have your expectations measured there in terms of those 2 games of how they fare. But I think, as you said, though, it can only help this team in terms of not only just getting a rest and resetting the batteries and, getting back to where they were before. Because, as you said, you look at that Arizona game and that Seattle game. Yeah, 2 points is 2 points, but did you feel really great about those? It's kind of the situation. Okay, David Pastrnak kind of bails you out. You get 2 goals against the Kraken, but it shouldn't have been that close. You let a 2-goal lead slip away. The Arizona game, thankfully, I missed quite a bit of it, which seems like I didn't miss much. I would check my phone. I would check my phone occasionally during the rehearsal dinner, and it'd just be people being like, "Yeah, they don't deserve 2 points. Like this game is if they keep up like this, they're going to lose this game." I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, good. Glad I picked one game not to watch during the regular season." So. I think having that time off will be great for the players in terms of just being able to reset, get back to some of the areas of their game that were slipping, whether it be D zone coverage, switching up the lines. Obviously, losing Eric Howla for the last couple of games hurt them quite a bit, which I don't know if that's an indictment on the Bruins that like you lose Eric Howla for a few games and the lineup gets put into
Fall
disarray, or
apart.
maybe it's a testament to how well he's playing and how he's elevating that second line. Even though I will say I think Nosek looked pretty good with Hall and Passon. Granted, you put most guys with those two, you'll probably look pretty good, um, but beyond just taking that break and refocusing your game and how much some time off just helps you there, it's also just the health component of it, right? Like beyond. Um, Guys being out injured, what have you, where this should help. Good on the list of guys like Frederick, Foligno, guys who are legitimately hurt, but there's also guys who've been nursing plenty of injuries, like even Brad Marchand, who's been back playing. Well, you wouldn't say he was 100% over the last week plus after getting slammed into the boards by Hathaway. Like that shoulder is still taking quite a bit of damage, so it's good for him that he was able to get some time off. Charlie McAvoy's kind of got the crap kicked out of him the last couple of weeks. I mean, he blocked a shot against the Kraken where he was on the ice for a little bit and was just like he's like slam the door behind him, getting back to the bench was in a lot of pain. So for all those guys that are dealing with plenty of bumps and bruises, this time off has to be great for them as well.
That's why I go back to this. Like you look at they wanted McAvoy to go to the All Star game because of the last vote
Mhm.
in, and then you also have why did Marchand not make it? And it's
Mhm.
like
No, on second thought.
kind of a blessing in disguise kind of thing. That's all right with me. I'm okay with that. And I think people kind of don't realize it. And obviously, you want the honor of going to the All Star game. I get that. You want the recognition, but at the same time, it's like, well, why would you want to put yourself through that when you're nursing injuries and you got to recover a bit? But yes, the schedule is not too kind to the Bruins once they come out the break. They have Pittsburgh, then 2 nights later they have Carolina, and they go on the road to Ottawa for a nice 12:30 game on a Saturday, which is
Lovely.
great. Then they are on the road against the Rangers, the Islanders, and then the Senators again. So they just kind of like do they go in a circle in the north part of North America. So interesting slate they have there. But speaking of upper part of North America, Conor Garland, Vancouver Canuck, noted pest, is back on the trade market, according to Elliot Friedman. And it's funny, the Bruins were a team that was interested in him last offseason, and they've been interested in him. He's from Massachusetts. He's a Massachusetts guy. So
No
everybody's
shore resident. Spells
always
his name correctly. Let's add.
yes. Well, isn't it should be Conah? Connor.
That is
That's what it
true.
should be.
No one's perfect, but
Not
no one's
everybody's
perfect, Kevin.
perfect. But anyways, the Canucks are just selling off every piece of the of the wagon here, except for like Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. But Garland, it's an interesting name because Garland went to the Canucks from the Coyotes with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and the Bruins were reportedly interested in Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. So obviously there's Garland, but could OEL potentially be in this package if that's done?
I still don't think so, even just because I still think that contract's such an albatross. And I think if you looked at OEL's numbers this year, I think his offensive production has dropped quite a bit. Like, I feel like he's only on pace for like 15, 20 points over an 82 game span. But I think his defense has tightened up a little bit. So he's becoming more of just like a solid top four guy. So, I mean, it fits the bill in terms of what you're looking for, but that contract is brutal still. And that's one you're still tied to for long term. So, I think when Friedman mentioned that Garland was a guy that was going to be available, that comes off the fact that I think Jim Rutherford and that new front office in Vancouver wants to move money out in other areas. He even mentioned Friedman did that Miller could be a guy that resigns, which is not good for the
Yeah.
Bruins, right? Because we've talked about how good of a fit Miller is. So if they hold on to Miller and find other contracts to move out, and Garland's a guy. I mean, it makes plenty of sense from the Bruins' perspective. There's a lot of like easy pros and cons to focus on. Like for the pros, one, Garland's not this guy who, even though he doesn't really have name recognition, which playing in Arizona for the first few years of your career, like will do that to you if no one knows who the hell you are.
Crazy.
But he's not like some guy that you can only kind of discern the value off of, points per 60 or underlying metrics. It's not like an Andre Kasha where it's like, well, if he was staying healthy, you put him in the right spot, he's going to do really well. Like I was looking up the stats for him over the last 2 years. He has 2 points fewer than Pastrnak at 5-on-5 play. Granted, Pasta has the power play proficiency that brings him into that upper tier, but Garland's not like this guy who's like a plug and play guy for 35 40 points. He could be a legitimate 20 plus goal scorer, 50 60 points regularly, and he's kind of produced everywhere he's gone in the NHL. So he's a legitimate value add, and you look at where he fits on this team. If you're able to acquire him, who's signed through 2026, cap under 5 million of an annual cap hit, which you're paying up a little bit, but still for what he could bring you for the next 4 or 5 years seems pretty much worth it. It fits in right with where you'd want him, right? Because if you have David Pastrnak stuck with Taylor Hall and insert second line center here, and you have Garland with Bergeron and Marchand, pretty good. Because in the domino effect, you have Craig Smith back on the third line. We'll see how he does with Charlie Coyle. Like you look at where the pieces fit, it makes plenty of sense. But then you factor in one, it's going to cost an awful lot, because for all the reasons we just said why he's a good fit, is exactly why Vancouver probably wants to see what they can get for him, because whether it be the production or that contract, we're going to ask for quite a bit. You're still looking at probably the same things we've talked about before with a guy like Miller, where it's first round pick, a legitimate prospect, right? Like I still think you're looking at more of the Lohrei and Lysell tier than you are, the trying to finagle your way with like, all right, we'll give up a first, but it's, how about Jack Studnicka, who, again, I still don't know what his value is, or Zach Senyshyn. Like, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be Jake DeBrusk, because of even if Vancouver wants to rebuild, they're still trying to move out cap. So they're not bringing in a guy who's due for a qualifying offer like DeBrusk. So you're going to have to give up quite a bit to get a guy like Garland. And then it kind of all goes back to the fact that, is Garland a good player? Yes. Will he make you better? Yes. But is right wing like your priority right now in terms of an area where you need to improve on? Like if you get him, it's more of just a luxury that helps you out. Like he definitely helps you, but are you giving up a first and like a key prospect and ignoring, the lack of depth down the middle or potential to add another guy on defense? It's all about kind of weighing where you want to improve. And even if Garland, helps you out this year and you have a pretty good top 6 winger group going forward, it's not going to help you much if you open up next year and it's Charlie Coyle and Eric Howe, your top 2 centers, right? So
David Krejci's looking across the water like, wow, now they're finally getting wingers I could have played with.
Exactly. So it's one of those ones where it definitely fits. He's a great player, and if he does get moved, I'm sure he's going to. I could see him going to like a team like Pittsburgh. He's like the ultimate. If no one knew about him, he would go to Pittsburgh and just become like a point per game guy, because that's just how talented he is. It's just for the Bruins, it's not like you have, if you had David Krejci here and you had like another defenseman, or you didn't have a guy like Lindholm or Chutrin wasn't available, you can settle on Garland, and that's a great pickup. But you just look at the flaws of this team, and if you acquire Garland and you're letting some of these other guys pass you by, you're setting yourself up for another big issue down the road, because you just look at that 2C spot and it's just still, I don't know how you can go into the playoffs with Howell as your 2C.
It just comes down to this team doesn't even have that much to trade away anyway. You would be giving all of your best assets up that you want to trade for Garland. You couldn't do Garland and a 2C. So it comes down to, you would basically just do Garland. Because we said this whole time, you either can get a 2C or a top 4 left shot defenseman. You can't have both.
Yeah.
Right? You got to make some compromises in some areas. If you just go out and get a top 6 right wing, which you don't really need, you probably can't also get a 2C or a top 4 left shot defenseman. So I think it comes down to that. Is like, that's not a need. Like if Krejci, as you said, if Krejci was still here, if this was even last year, that's what they did. They went out and got Taylor Hall. But to me, I just don't I like Garland. I like him as a player. I think he fits the culture here. It fit the whole how they play. But you don't need them. And right now, you just need to get guys you need. And that comes down to guys like JT Miller and Claude Giroux and Mark Giordano. Like, that is the crew you got to be looking at. The goalie situation for the Bruins seems like it's right back at square one. Rask is injured. He's, we don't really know what the status is. They're saying he's probably going to be back after the All-Star break. And then you have Swayman and Ullmark who are back hugging after the Kraken win. That was it seems like they're happy to be back together, which I'm surprised. It's funny. I think with the Brady stuff and the Belichick text messages and all these things, it's kind of overshadowed what sports radio would normally be talking about, which is they hate Rask. They must hate Tuukka Rask.
Yes.
So in some ways, it saved us. But what should we expect when Rask comes back?
It's a tough situation to navigate just because it's not like this is just a situation where he pulled something and it's like, I'll give it a few days. It seems like they're kind of still waiting for this flare up to sort itself out. Bruce Cassidy mentioned that it's not like it's a new injury, like he has a groin pull or something like that. It's a lingering thing from his surgery, which is not great. You don't really want to hear that, right? So it seems like for them, it's kind of a waiting game as to when he gets back, and from there, it's what do you do going forward? Like, it sure seems like the easiest way to kind of navigate through this is see if he agrees to like a conditioning stint down in Providence, which I believe you can do without passing through waivers. It's like a conditioning loan you can do through the CBA. So if he goes down there, plays 2-3 games, gets the rust off without having the risk of him rolling with the punches up in the NHL when you've got points up for grabs. So if he goes down there and you give Ullmark and Swayman a few more reps up here, seems like it's the easiest way to, one, see how Rask is, and two, satisfy all parties for right now in terms of Swayman gets another start, or two maybe up here. Rask gets the rust off, and if Rask doesn't have it or if he's still injured, it's better to learn down in Providence than up here where you've got still valuable points up for grabs.
Yeah, I'm for that. I think, and again, I think a lot of people look back and go, they should have just, because I think at the time when Rask's series in Providence got postponed due to COVID, they just kind of brought him right up, and some people were like, why not just like keep him down there for a bit and like let him, get some rust off there. But then he looked good against Philadelphia, so it was like, oh, he all is well, and so I do think that kind of you are right back at square one in that sense. But I think if they can continue to just switch up Ullmark and Swayman until Rask is better, I think you're good. I think the one risk is that when they come back, it'll be around mid-February. So that's not mid, but February 8th is technically kind of almost mid-February. And you have March, and you got April, and then it's May playoff times. Yeah, you got to start like getting this going here. You got to see who's going to be starting these games. And I think this does kind of hurt. Like, as much as Rask is getting rest and he's not going to be playing, 60 games this year, he's got to kind of get his feet under him in the NHL net. So I don't know. That is just another. I thought we kind of had the goaltending situation settled. Then Rask was hurt, and they called Swayman out to Dallas. So certainly an interesting situation there. Now, speaking of the second half, we have our second half picks for one player who we think needs to rebound in the second half. I will let you take the honors. Who is your one player you want to see rebound?
I think it has to be Brendan Carlo. I think you kind of just look at, and it's so tough to quantify or do like a deep dive into a guy like Carlo, who's a stay-at-home guy, gets a lot of tough defensive assignments, not a lot of ozone ice. So if you look at like his Corsi or any underlying metric, it's going to look pretty shitty anyway, right? Because he's always in the D zone, like taking shots and what have you. So it's tough to do it there. But you just look at the basic eye test, whether it's him struggling to move the puck, get that first pass. He struggled with a lot of, teams like Carolina that have a very, frantic, fast-paced forecheck. To just like uncharacteristic, D zone miscues and gaffes where it's leading to pretty, cut and dry grade A chances for the other team. Just things like that are, stick out for you on quite a few of his shifts recently. So I don't know whether it's a lingering injury. Obviously, he dealt with his injury issues last year as well, which you really hope have not carried over. But for a guy like Carlo, who is viewed as a key cog on this decor, who's one of your defensive stoppers, you just need a little bit better from him in kind of all areas of his game. But even again, you don't need him to be this breakout star or what have you. If he just gets back to simplifying his game and being that shutdown guy, make a world of a difference for this decor, which has unfortunately let the team out to dry quite a bit over the last few weeks. So for him, just getting back to his strengths will be key for this team, because he really needs to kind of get back to some of his strengths, because it's tough. You haven't seen kind of that prime Carlo in quite a few weeks now, if not most of the season.
I was gonna say the whole first half, it's felt like he has been less than what we kind of expect from him. My own would be Charlie Coyle, actually. And granted, it's kind of the coaching staff who, they put Carlo on the third line, and then they brought him up to the second line, and they didn't, he didn't even put Pastrnak with him. They moved Pastrnak back up to the first line, so we kind of got shafted in a sense with with the line combinations. But still, you need to see a little bit more production from Coyle. You're kind of waiting on that from him. I believe he has like 20 points in 43 games. So a little more would be nice. Carlo would also be a pick of mine. I also mentioned Mike Riley would be someone who you'd like to see some more consistency out of. And you're seeing, right? Like you see those spurts where he's really good. I think you'd like to see that just more often. So yeah, I mean, I think right now those are the guys who I would pick. You could maybe say like a Craig Smith, but he's done fine on the first line, so he's been fine there. I can't think of anybody else that I would. I mean, Rask.
you generally don't want your starting goalie to have an .844 save percentage, so that would be key. But I would agree with those guys. Definitely, I think Smith too. I think also this time off should really help him because I think he's still been dealing with that nagging injury he had really early on in the year. And again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be a 25 goal scorer, but still, I think he's on pace over like an 82 game stretch to, I think, be around like 26 points, which is, you're looking at kind of that 15 goal, 40 point kind of threshold for him over a full season. So hopefully if they settle, on him being at that top line again, this time out really helps him get back to kind of his game and start bearing a few more chances. Because again, they're going to need more than just the usual suspects to get this offense kind of rolling in the second half.
Oh yeah. But so those are our guys. Those are our bounce back candidates for the second half. And speaking of the second half, Connor, what can people look forward to from you in the second half?
Well, we're going to be looking at obviously a couple of breakdowns over, looking back on the first half. We have a column going up today, breaking down the Conor Garland, trade discussion and the pros and cons of that. We're revisiting our first half predictions, which I did a quick glance at those, and holy shit, I'm going to have to do a lot of writing on that. It's not great. So tune in to that for this weekend because I'll have that up to laugh at. And then going to the second half, again, schedule's going to be ramping up. We'll hopefully be not all through Zoom. Fingers crossed, let's hope, going forward. So that opens the door for more features, one-on-ones, all that kind of good stuff that we love to do over at BSJ. So looking forward to kind of sharing more of that content with you guys. So all that stuff will be over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So subscribe to BSJ. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConnorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofski. Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.